The moment you stop chasing, everything changes. Not because the world suddenly becomes kinder, not because people magically wake up and realize your worth overnight, but because for the first time in a long time, you stop abandoning yourself just to keep someone else comfortable. There comes a point in life when silence becomes louder than every explanation you ever gave. A point where your unanswered messages, your quiet distance, your emotional withdrawal say more than paragraphs ever could. And that moment is power. Most people think power is loud. They think it's arguing harder, proving more, begging for clarity, demanding attention, or fighting to be chosen. But real power is different. Real power is calm. It's controlled. It's the ability to walk away from what hurts you without announcing your exit to the world. And when you finally master silent withdrawal, your entire life begins to transform. Because silence is not emptiness. Silence is self-respect. Silence is emotional discipline. Silence is the moment you stop handing your heart to people who only know how to hold it carelessly. Too many people spend years trying to convince others to love them correctly. They explain their feelings over and over. They ask for consistency. They ask for honesty. They ask for effort. They ask to be seen. And little by little, without even noticing, they begin shrinking themselves just to maintain connections that were never healthy to begin with. That's the exhausting part about emotional chasing. It drains your confidence slowly. You start questioning your worth because someone else refuses to recognize it. You begin measuring your value by response times, attention, validation, and temporary affection. But the moment you pull your energy back, something powerful happens. You remember who you were before the confusion. You remember that your peace matters too. You remember that your energy is not something everyone deserves unlimited access to. And suddenly, your silence becomes sacred. There is a different kind of confidence that comes from no longer needing to explain yourself. A different kind of beauty that appears when you stop trying to force people to understand your value. Because the truth is simple. The people who genuinely care never needed endless explanations in the first place. Real love does not require emotional begging. Real respect does not require constant reminders. Real effort does not disappear the second you stop initiating. That's why silence reveals everything. The moment you stop texting first, stop chasing first, stop apologizing first, stop fixing every broken interaction, you begin to see the truth clearly. Not the fantasy you created in your head, not the potential you hoped they would become. The truth. Because when your energy disappears, people reveal exactly how much your presence actually meant to them. Some will step forward, some will disappear, and both responses are answers. That's what makes silent withdrawal so powerful. It removes illusion, it strips away confusion, it forces reality into the light. No more decoding mixed signals, no more overanalyzing messages, no more convincing yourself that inconsistency means love. Actions always speak louder when your silence gives them room to speak. And sometimes the hardest truth to accept is this. Many people only enjoy your presence because you made access to yourself too easy. You answered immediately. You forgave too quickly. You stayed too long. You gave endless chances. You tolerated behavior that quietly broke your spirit because you were afraid of losing the connection. But what if losing the connection is exactly what saves you? What if your healing begins the moment you stop trying to keep people who never truly valued you? That's the shift silent withdrawal creates. It teaches you that not every relationship deserves your energy. Not every person deserves your softness. Not everyone deserves front row access to your heart. And once you truly understand that, your standards begin to rise naturally. You stop entertaining bare minimum behavior. You stop romanticizing inconsistency. You stop confusing attention with genuine care. You stop begging for what should already be freely given. Because love should never feel like emotional survival. One of the most painful experiences in life is realizing you fought harder for someone than they ever fought for you. Realizing you carried conversations, carried effort, carried emotional weight, carried hope, while the other person simply enjoyed receiving without giving equally in return. That realization hurts, but it also frees you because awareness changes everything. Once you see the imbalance clearly, you cannot unsee it. And eventually, your soul becomes tired of overextending itself for people who never intended to meet you halfway. That exhaustion becomes wisdom. You begin protecting your peace instead of sacrificing it. You begin guarding your emotional energy instead of handing it out recklessly. You begin understanding that your presence is valuable precisely because it is rare. And rarity creates respect. People value what is not constantly available. That's true emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and even socially. The more accessible you make yourself to people who take you for granted, the more invisible your value becomes. But when you step back with dignity, people feel the shift immediately. Your absence creates space for truth. And silence has a strange way of amplifying reality. Suddenly, the people who claimed they were too busy somehow find time. Suddenly, the people who ignored your effort notice your absence. Suddenly, the energy changes. But here's the important part. Silent withdrawal is not about manipulation. It is not about playing games. It is not about punishing someone until they come running back. That mindset still places your emotional focus on them. True silent withdrawal is different. It's about returning your focus to yourself. It's about healing. It's about reclaiming your identity outside of emotional chaos. It's about stepping away from situations that continuously damage your peace. And sometimes, silence becomes the healthiest thing you can do for yourself. Because there are conversations that never lead anywhere. Arguments that repeat endlessly. Promises that never become actions. Apologies that come without change. And eventually, mature people stop arguing with patterns. They simply leave. Quietly. Respectfully. Completely. There is incredible strength in no longer needing closure from people who continuously hurt you. Because closure does not always come through conversations. Sometimes closure comes through acceptance. Acceptance that you deserved better. Acceptance that effort should be mutual. Acceptance that inconsistency is a decision. Acceptance that someone's inability to value you correctly is not proof that you are unworthy. And once you accept those truths, walking away becomes easier. Not painless, but necessary. Too many people remain emotionally trapped because they keep waiting for people to become who they hoped they would be. They cling to potential instead of reality. They hold on to memories instead of present behavior. But potential is not commitment. Words are not effort. And temporary affection is not genuine emotional availability. That's why distance creates clarity. When emotions calm down, patterns become obvious. You start noticing how often you were the one carrying everything. You notice how anxious the relationship made you feel. You notice how much energy you spent trying to maintain something that should have flowed naturally. And most importantly, you notice how peaceful life becomes once the emotional noise disappears. That peace is priceless. Because peace is not boring. Peace is healing. Peace is emotional safety. Peace is waking up without anxiety over who texted back or who suddenly changed their mood. Peace is no longer begging for consistency. Peace is no longer feeling emotionally disposable. Peace is finally choosing yourself. And that choice changes your entire energy. You become calmer, stronger, more focused, more emotionally grounded. You stop operating from fear of abandonment and start operating from self-respect. That transformation is magnetic. People can feel it. When someone no longer tolerates disrespect, their entire presence changes. Their posture changes. Their conversations change. Their standards change. Even their silence changes. Because silence, backed by confidence, feels different. It no longer feels wounded. It feels intentional. And intentional silence is powerful because it cannot be manipulated easily. That's why many people become uncomfortable when you stop reacting emotionally. They were used to your availability, used to your forgiveness, used to your emotional labor, used to your constant understanding. But when you finally choose yourself, the dynamic changes completely, and some people will not like that version of you. They preferred the version that overgave, the version that tolerated disrespect, the version that stayed silent about their pain while constantly prioritizing everyone else. But growth requires change, and growth often disappoints people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. That's okay. You are not responsible for remaining emotionally accessible to people who continuously drain you. You are responsible for protecting your well-being. And sometimes, protecting your peace requires distance. The beautiful thing about silent withdrawal is that it reconnects you with yourself. When you stop obsessing over someone else's behavior, you finally hear your own thoughts again. You reconnect with your goals, your passions, your confidence, your identity. You begin remembering who you are outside of emotional attachment. That rediscovery is life-changing. Because somewhere along the way, many people lose themselves trying to keep relationships alive. They dim their personalities, they silence their needs, they lower their standards, they shrink their dreams. They sacrifice too much just to avoid losing someone. But love that requires self-abandonment is not healthy love. Real love expands you. It does not erase you. And the moment you realize that, you stop settling for emotional crumbs. You stop glorifying inconsistency. You stop mistaking confusion for passion. You stop accepting temporary effort as long-term commitment. Instead, you begin expecting reciprocity, respect, emotional maturity, consistency. Because those things are not luxuries. They are the foundation of healthy connection. One of the biggest signs of emotional growth is when you stop forcing things that clearly require force to survive. Healthy relationships do not require constant chasing. Healthy communication does not require emotional detective work. Healthy love does not leave you emotionally exhausted every day. And when you finally experience peace after withdrawing from toxic dynamics, you begin understanding how heavy those situations truly were. That's why many people glow differently after walking away. Not because they stopped caring, but because they stopped suffering. They stopped pouring endless energy into places where it was never appreciated properly. And the energy they once spent chasing now gets redirected toward rebuilding themselves. That's where the real transformation begins. You start investing in your own life again. You focus on your health, your purpose, your goals, your growth, your happiness. And little by little, you become unrecognizable. Not because someone saved you, because you saved yourself. That's the deepest power of silent withdrawal. It reminds you that your life does not begin or end with someone else's attention. Your worth is not dependent on who chooses you. Your value does not decrease because someone failed to appreciate you correctly. And your future is not tied to people who continuously fail to show up for you. Sometimes walking away is not losing love. Sometimes it is finding yourself again. And the people who are truly meant for you will never require you to abandon your peace to keep them. They will meet you with effort, clarity, respect, consistency, not confusion, not manipulation, not emotional instability disguised as passion. Because mature love does not play games with your nervous system. Mature love feels safe. And once you experience emotional safety, you stop romanticizing emotional chaos. You stop confusing unpredictability with excitement. You stop chasing unavailable people, hoping they will finally choose you. Instead, You choose yourself first, every single time. That's when your standards evolve. You stop asking, "Why didn't they love me correctly?" and start asking, "Why did I tolerate less than I deserved for so long?" That question changes everything, because it shifts the focus back to your healing instead of their behavior. You realize that your silence was never about revenge. It was about recovery. Recovery from emotional exhaustion. Recovery from overgiving. Recovery from constantly proving your worth. Recovery from relationships that made you question your value. And healing requires distance sometimes. Not everyone deserves continued access to you while you rebuild yourself. Some people only knew how to love the version of you that lacked boundaries, but boundaries are necessary. They protect your peace. They protect your energy. They protect your future. And the strongest boundaries are often silent ones. No dramatic announcements, no endless explanations, no emotional performances, just quiet distance, quiet healing, quiet growth, quiet transformation. That kind of transformation speaks for itself eventually, because people notice when someone stops settling. They notice when your confidence returns. They notice when your energy changes. They notice when you no longer seek validation desperately. And suddenly, the same people who overlooked you begin recognizing your value. But by then, you're different. You no longer need external validation to feel worthy. You already know your value internally. That inner confidence changes your entire life. You walk differently, speak differently, love differently. You stop attaching your self-worth to attention. You stop chasing temporary affection. You stop trying to convince people to stay. Instead, you begin understanding something incredibly important. The right people never need to be forced. Real connection flows naturally. Real care reveals itself consistently. Real love feels intentional. And people who genuinely value you do not repeatedly place you in situations that damage your peace. That realization alone can save years of emotional suffering. Because sometimes the greatest act of self-love is accepting what someone's behavior has been trying to tell you all along. Not everyone deserves continued access to your energy. Not everyone deserves unlimited chances. Not everyone deserves your softness. And protecting your peace does not make you cold. It makes you wise. There is wisdom in walking away before resentment destroys your spirit completely. There is wisdom in recognizing emotionally unavailable behavior early. There is wisdom in no longer negotiating your worth. And there is immense power in silence when it comes from self-respect instead of fear. Because silence rooted in confidence is transformative. It creates clarity. It restores dignity. It rebuilds identity. It reconnects you with your own power. And eventually, you stop mourning the people who failed to value you correctly. You start celebrating the version of yourself that finally walked away, the version that stopped settling, the version that stopped begging, the version that finally realized that love should never cost your peace. That version of you becomes unstoppable. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you finally stop betraying yourself to keep others comfortable. And that is the true transformation after silent withdrawal. You rise, quietly, powerfully, completely. You stop shrinking yourself to fit inside temporary connections. You stop abandoning your standards for inconsistent people. You stop giving endless energy to situations that continuously leave you emotionally empty. And instead, you begin building a life centered around peace, clarity, confidence, and self-respect. That is where your real power begins. Not in chasing, not in proving, not in convincing, but in knowing when to walk away, knowing when to let silence speak, knowing when your peace matters more than preserving a connection that no longer honors your heart. Because your silence is not weakness. It never was. It is strength under control. It is dignity in motion. It is self-love finally choosing itself. And the moment you truly understand that, everything changes forever.